So I have no faith in the U.S. dollar holding its value, where our debt is going up. We're printing money to pay our bills. That's like using a credit card to pay your mortgage. You know what I mean? Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Again, we broadcast from downtown or Phoenix, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And right now it's still heaven, but it'll soon be hell. People say, well, how can you stand the heat? So what's they have air conditioning for? You know, air conditioning the cars, and air conditioning the house. And I like it. It's not that bad. Hawaii is humid and Arizona is just hot. But if it's humid, I get tired. So that's why it doesn't bother me too much. Today, we have a very important show. It's about Bitcoin, gold, and silver. But more than that, we're going to go macro as to what's going on today at a place called Columbia University and all across the world with, the Hamas and anti-Semitic rhetoric and anti-Israeli and all this stuff. And as some of you know, I fought for the United States. I'm a U.S. Marine. I went to Vietnam twice to fight for our freedom. And today we're in chaos. And so in 1965, when I went to school, I left Hawaii and went all the way to school in New York. Columbia University was right down the street, and that's where the rioting started. So then in 1965, my economics teacher had our class read this book here. And I suggest everybody should read it, because when I read Communist Manifesto, I realized my family, a lot of them are Marxist. Now, they're not bad people. It's like some people are Christian, some people are Buddhist, some people are Jewish. Economics is kind of a money or a religion. That's all it is. So in Marxism, they believe in taxation, which I don't like, and all the other things they go into. But the thing that happened at Columbia University was staged. He talks about communism would take over America in 2 stages. And stage 1 occurred in 1930 when Columbia University, where all the kerfuffle's going on today as we speak in 2024, they invited Marxist teachers from Germany to teach at Columbia University's college, Teachers College. And in 1966, 67, 68 is when all those rioting blew up in Columbia. And it's repeating again today. History proves we don't learn anything. So we're blowing up anti-Semitic, anti-Palestine, Hamas, and it's getting worse. So my special guest today, we will get to crypto, Bitcoin, gold, silver, but I think we need to take a macro look at what's going on before we go further. This is my friend Andy Schectman. Well, full disclosure, I'm a client of his. I buy from him. I trust him. I like people who educate when they sell, because I call for the education more than the gold or silver. And his company is Miles Franklin, one of the best companies in gold and silver. But also Andy is Jewish, and my friend Blair Singer is Jewish. And I don't know the difference. What is a Jew? Is it a religion? Is it a race? Is it this? And I never understood it. So I thought I'd ask, since we have this Hamas stuff blowing up and Columbia University back in the news, all this rioting, I thought I'd ask Andy to give his point of view. What do you think is going on, Andy?
I find it to be crazy. Most of the people that are protesting would not be very welcomed by Hamas, to say the least. But coming from my perspective, look, I was born Jewish. I never even had a bar mitzvah. I started my company on a wing and a prayer with a loan in a 1-room office the size of a closet. Nothing was ever given to me. I never came into this world entitled. I came born into a religion that I know very little about. Now, I'm proud to be Jewish, but I can't read a lick of Hebrew and don't understand the religion other than the very, very, very basics. And yet I would be painted into a corner as being, part of the problem. I never understood why a very, very tiny, small percentage of human population, but a speck of dust in relation to the rest of the world, when you look at the outsized level of things that they have contributed to the world in art, in literature, in medicine, in finance, all of these things, they are so hated. It bothers me an awful lot, but it's a bigger deal. I mean, the lack of unity in this country is
Yes.
unbelievable. And I think that what's happening at Columbia and other universities is complete and total disgrace, to be honest with you. And one of these deals where you feel you wonder why is there such hatred, um, just based on how you came into this world. And I don't know, I think symbolic of a bigger problem in this country, Robert, very
Yeah.
much so.
Like my family being Japanese after Pearl Harbor, my not in Hawaii, but my family, my relatives who lived on the west coast of America, California, they were put in internment camps, just the same as the Jews were, And so my family, being that they were Americans, I'm fourth generation Japanese American, my uncle said, well, we're going to fight for America to prove that we're here to serve America. So they formed the 442nd Infantry Battalion. It was all Japanese. And because they were in the concentration camps in America, but I think when they got to Europe, they were liberating some of the prisoner of war camps for the Jews. So it was.
Well, look at the difference there. Your family assimilated and contributed to the country, where we have people in Dearborn, Michigan, saying "Death to America" on American soil, and yet they're focusing on Jews, and it just doesn't make sense to me. People, I just are uneducated, I guess, is what you could say to that.
Well, I think it is taught by your parents. I suspect that. I had a friend who is Muslim, Saleh. I loved him to death, but man, I never met a man who hated Jews so much. I said, Saleh, do you know any of them? He goes, no. So why do you hate them? I said, I don't know, I just hate them. But I think it was taught to him. He wouldn't admit that. Or it's the same as people hate blacks. They're taught it at home. So that's my only easy 10-cent psychological input to that. So this goes into, we're now at this Hamas, Israel, we have Ukraine, we have the Biden full operation. I mean, Trump is on trial for doing what every real estate entrepreneur does. They pad their financials. Give me a break. And so it's fascism right now, what they're doing to Trump. Do you know what I mean? They're gonna use the court system to put a good man in jail and make sure he doesn't get elected. That's fascism. Yeah. And then Hunter Biden, the FBI loses his laptop. Oh my God, Andy. As my Spanish friend would say, ¿Qué pasa? What's going on here? What do you think? I mean, but it's a reason to buy gold, silver, Bitcoin, and all this, because our currency is screwed up now. It's going to get worse because our debt keeps going up.
Well, and all of that's true. I mean, our debt is going up to the tune of $1 trillion every 100 days. It took 200 years to do it the first time. We are adding debt at a level that is unsustainable. We have $9 trillion in treasuries that need to be rolled over at higher interest rates this year alone, at a time when the world is selling treasuries. China is down to just over 700 billion. They were at 3 trillion not too long ago. Obviously, Iran and Russia, they sold all their treasuries. Saudi Arabia is lowering their treasury amount. Japan is. So as all of these countries are shedding treasuries, who's buying them, including the Federal Reserve, the number one holder of our debt? They're rolling them off their balance sheet. So who's going to finance the 10 or 11 trillion dollars every year for the next 10 that we have obligations towards to roll over at higher interest rates? Who's going to finance this irresponsible spending that we have? You mentioned the Ukraine. We've given them $200 billion, Robert, since February of 2022, with no congressional oversight, yet $5 billion to build a wall to protect border states like Arizona and Texas. Well, that's just too much. And President Trump should have been vilified for that, right? And so we are misplaced. We're borrowing money to give to a country instead of taking care of our own borders, where the Senate, after voting for this, is cheering and waving Ukrainian flags. And then at the same time, you have our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, 3 weeks ago in Brazil, the B in BRICS saying, sanctioning Russian 380 billion in forex reserves, that's not enough. We need to confiscate them. I believe they vote on that tomorrow, to confiscate them.
They're going to pull more sanctions against Russia.
Yes. And they're going to not just sanction, but confiscate their assets. And then you had her just this week on Monday, or maybe last week, at the end of the week, do an interview with CNBC threatening China. If you aid Russia and their military, and again, C in BRICS is China. And if you aid them, we have no problem with you being friends. Thanks, Janet. That's cool. But if you aid them in any way towards their military efforts, we will sanction your companies, your banks, and even Beijing. So it's okay for us to give $200 billion to the Ukraine. But if you do it, we're going to sanction you. And now they're threatening to sanction Pakistan for wanting to build a pipeline for oil between Pakistan and Iran. These sanctions are what is creating the resentment and the view that we're very hypocritical around the world.
So let's get back to gold, silver, and Bitcoin now. Would you mind telling us about Miles Franklin? But one of the most important things is that what your father taught you about what your deal with your father was. Because
the best gift I've ever been given by far. I make all my employees do it too, and they all thank me, and I thank my dad. It was the best. I think of you all the time when I think of this, because in talking to you all the time, you talk about getting out of the rat race. And that's part of your game. And that resonates with me, because how do you get out of the rat race? There are ways to do it. You've enumerated that many ways, many times. But to me, the best way I've learned personally to get out of the rat race is to pay yourself first. And my father told me when I started the company that every 2 weeks, as a 19-year-old kid, I'll buy something metal when I get paid, or he'll fire me, that he wouldn't let me make the same mistakes that he had made. And I thought, well, if that's the only rule, I can deal with that. 34 years later, I look at that as the greatest gift I've ever been given. I've run the company myself for over 2 decades. He won't fire me anymore, but the promise I've honored. And I buy something every 2 weeks, and I don't look at gold and silver as an investment. I look at it as wealth. I think you do too. It's not something you buy to get wealthy. It is wealth. If you own enough, okay, you could be considered wealthy, but it's wealth. And paying yourself first is how you get out of the rat race.
The reason is because in 71, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the dollar became debt. And now our debt, exactly the same, every 100 days or 90 days, U.S. is increasing their debt by $1 trillion. How long? How you have a say? How big is $1 trillion? You always cite that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because look, most of us in our lifetime can make $1 million working. You may not save it, but you can make it. And there's lots of billionaires out there. And, $1 trillion seconds ago, $1 trillion doesn't sound like that much, because $1 million and $1 billion, they're obtainable, I guess. $1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. Numbers are so big, it's unfathomable.
Say it again. A trillion.
31,688 years ago, Neanderthals stalking the plains of Europe is 1 trillion seconds ago. And we're adding that every 100 days. And we're adding 100 billion in interest payments roughly every 100 days as well. The numbers, it's the hockey stick phase where they start to go up parabolically. And to return from that becomes almost impossible.
Ralph Pell calls it the banana phase. It goes parabolic up there. So tell us about Miles Franklin. And full disclosure, I'm a client of yours. I buy from you. But
we're a precious metals company, been doing it for 34 years. We do have a website where you can purchase, but the prices are nowhere near as good if you just simply send us an email at info@milesfranklin and say you heard me on the Rich Dad program. We'll send you a price list that will be as good or better than anywhere in America. We'll answer any questions that you've heard here on this show or anything else that you have questions about. No obligation. info@milesfranklin.com. If you just want the price list, that's great. Or any questions or want to be contacted. And we've done this for 34 years, almost to 10 billion in sales, never had a customer complaint ever. We've made mistakes, but not enough to warrant someone to put a nasty complaint online somewhere. We make right if we make a mistake, but that's who we are. And something, I was talking to someone last night and they said, what is one of your secrets of success? I said, something, I can't remember a day in 34 years where I didn't wake up looking forward to seeing what the world has brought and to doing this. And it's something I love. And I think you've loved what you've done forever. And maybe that's why you're successful. I think having a passion is something that's important. And this is something that, regardless of speaking online and getting pushback or whatever it is, it's my labor of love. And it's something that I enjoy and feel I'm contributing even a little bit to society by doing this. And that's who we are, and that's who I am.
And then, like your dad had you pay yourself first. I first started buying silver in 1964 when I started noticing the coins had copper around them. And then I bought my first gold in 1972. I flew behind enemy lines in Vietnam to look for gold. And I realized I didn't know what gold looked like. So I was a helicopter pilot. And so I finally had to wait to go all the way to Hong Kong. And I'm in the streets of Hong Kong dealing with the Chinese. As you know, they're very smart people, very smart people. And I was getting an education in gold and silver and what I call real money. Gold and silver are real money. And so I bought my first Krugerrand. I had to pay $50 for an ounce. You know what I mean? But a few weeks ago, it was $35. And I still have that Krugerrand. I don't store it here in America. It's stored outside of Switzerland in another country. And the reason for that, as you know, which is that the poster over your right shoulder is, Roosevelt confiscated people's gold. So it's being a little paranoid. My gold is not in America and it's in storage vaults outside of Switzerland someplace. So that's my story. And I don't save dollars. That's why I put savers or losers. And I save silver and I gold. And just recently, about 10 years ago, I started buying Bitcoin, and I look at the whole thing and then people want to argue. I hear it all the time on YouTube. Which is better, gold or Bitcoin, or silver or Bitcoin? And I was laughing. Why do people argue about such stupid things? Just how many do you have? That's all that counts. How many ounces of gold, how many ounces of silver, how many Bitcoin or Solana or whatever you got. But they want to argue and debate it, and they don't have anything. That makes no sense to me.
Well, and I rue the debate. I mean, last time I saw you in person was in Vancouver, and I had lunch with our mutual friend Mark Moss and Natalie Burnell, and they opened my eyes in many respects to some of the things I hadn't been thinking about in Bitcoin. And before I take that any further, I'll just simply say that it has always been going all the way back to when Bitcoin was $400 a coin. I had a gentleman working for me named Andy Hoffman who also opened my eyes into Bitcoin, and we together wanted to build a bridge between the Bitcoin community and the physical metals community, because after all, the ideology in many respects is the same. The pushback against what's happening in the country with the monetary and fiscal policy, the decentralization, in other words, owning something that you hold physically that is not simultaneously someone else's liability. Now, that didn't work out so well at the time for various reasons, not because of the ideology, just because differences of opinion. But suffice it to say, my thinking is that we all come in the door for the same reason. And maybe the difference between the two is that the Bitcoin community wants to profit.
Let me add this. The reason we buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin are the same reason. It's not any different. Just tell me how many ounces you have. Yeah.
Well, that's the point. And I think we should be complementary to one another instead of adversarial. And I think anyone's portfolio that is rich in Bitcoin would be stronger if some of the profits were put into gold. You're hedging your bet. And I'll simply say this, that I don't delegitimize Bitcoin at all. In fact, since I last saw you, I've been buying it along with gold and silver every 2 weeks. And that's new to me, because I don't want to miss out on it. And I don't want to miss out on what could be a global trend. But, it's never really been my focus. But I'm open-minded enough to add little bits of it on a habitual basis. But you're right. I mean, I think that if you look at the central banks of the world, which are the most well-informed traders, forget about how wealthy they are. they've been buying gold at a level the world has never seen before. So there is legitimacy to taking some of the profits in cryptocurrencies that people have made a fortune and put that into something that's stable and that the biggest money, smartest money, most well-informed traders in the world are buying. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be mutually exclusive of one another. I think your portfolio becomes a hell of a lot stronger, as you've been recommending for years now, having allocations to all three, instead of just only looking in one direction. Broaden your horizons. You'll probably end up having a stronger portfolio.
What I want to say is, you don't have to make something wrong to be right. I mean, it's really stupid, but that's what causes war. I'm right, you're wrong. And these assholes who are debating gold and silver and Bitcoin and Solara and all this other stuff, it's just about a bunch of hot air. And that's the point. Is I buy gold, silver, Bitcoin, and I just bought some Ethereum simply for the same reason. Our money is fake. Our money.
Because you get it, and you see the bigger picture. And I think we're in the minority. People.
So let me say this much: I think his name is Michael Saylor. His MicroStrategies and all that. I mean, he's putting billions into Bitcoin. Billions. I got my 60 coins, and he's got billions. I'm going, holy mackerel! And but he says, what do you call a person who saves fiat currency or the U.S. dollar? Poor. And that's what's happening today. People with old ideas are getting poorer and poorer and poorer because, as you know, my whole shtick is, what does school teach you about money? Nothing. So anyway, we come back. We've been going more into this and all this, but I'm glad we start with the macro. And then any kind of racism is more than a sin. It's a crime. So anyway, we'll be right back.
Have you heard about the expanding influence of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and its potential to severely impact the US dollar by possibly creating a new world currency? Even JP Morgan said, and I'm paraphrasing, the impact of BRICS would most likely be felt here in the US, where moving away from the dollar would cause our financial assets like our IRAs and 401ks to lose value. We agree with JP Morgan and many others. Now's the time to position yourself for stability, security, and wealth protection. So take it from Robert and me, whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting, we believe that gold should be a part of everyone's portfolio. Seize the opportunity to ensure your financial future with gold, and do it with one of the best in the industry, Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold has done things right from the beginning, having earned 5 stars with TrustLink and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. Allegiance Gold can help protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver, or you can have it delivered securely to your doorstep. Get up to $5,000 in free silver on a qualifying investment when you visit protectwithrobert.com today. Or you can call 844-3-ROBERT. That's 844-3-ROBERT. Hi everyone, I'm Kim Kiyosaki. Thank you for being with us today. As CEO and co-founder of the Rich Dad Company, I can assure you, Robert and I are both dedicated to our Rich Dad mission to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And you are the humanity. We truly want you to succeed. When you succeed, we all succeed, and our mission grows stronger. With that in mind, I'm excited to extend a personal invitation to you to elevate your financial well-being by attending our exclusive free online wealth building event hosted by Robert. You'll learn what to focus on first to start increasing your cash flow immediately. You can reserve your seat right now by going to richdadonline.com. Just go to richdadonline.com. The event is 100% free and will help you achieve your financial goals.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. One thing is, I'm not a financial planner. I don't make recommendations. You should do this or should do that. I tell you what I do, and that's as far as it goes. You want to do something, you do it. You don't want to do it, don't blame me. But the reason I buy from Miles Franklin is because I have several people I buy from, but I go for the information, education. So I can call Andy up because I'm going to buy something, and he'll always add some bit of knowledge or wisdom or history that increases my understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So we started with Columbia University, which is, like I said, their teachers' college in 1930 and invited Nazis in from Germany to teach the teachers. And that's when communism spread all across America, was through academic system. And now we have rioting, anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli. We've lost our whole focus on what we do it for. So Andy was telling me before we went on the air, there's a paper called Cloward-Piven or something that explains what is happening at Columbia and throughout the world right now.
Yeah, before I mention what the Cloward-Piven theory is, I talk a lot about a man named Jared Bernstein. And Jared Bernstein is the lead economic advisor to the United States government who advocates for losing the world reserve status. And he's written reports on it, dethrone King Dollar, et cetera. And, by weaponizing the dollar and telling Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of the hegemony, hey, we're going green. Well, that set the ball in motion. And I always have said, I've talked about that with you a lot and on your show. But I've also talked about the things that bother me the most about what's happening in this country is the lawlessness, the open borders, the wokeness, the questioning of the electoral system, of the judicial system. That's bothered me more than anything because, if this country represented what it was when you went to fight for it, I think we were united and we could stand up to problems. We could fix this. We could get away from it. But when people look at what's happening in our country, all of the things I just mentioned, I think they wonder what the hell's going on in this country. Now, interestingly enough, Jared Bernstein, who I believe is the architect of the de-dollarization plan, the lead economic advisor of the U.S. government, graduated along with Barack Obama from Columbia University, along with Anthony Bilkin, the current Secretary of State, former Attorney Generals Bill Barr and Eric Holder, and Madeleine Albright, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN. And I want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Mark Moss, who kind of turned me on to this, opened my eyes to it. And it blew me away because all of these things that I've been lamenting over the past several months on gosh knows how many podcasts I've done and talked about it, there's the Cloward-Piven strategy that I'm like, oh my God, this is what they're doing. And it's about a man named Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. They were two professors who taught at Columbia University, husband and wife. And they taught a theory that outlined a plan to socialize America by overwhelming the systems with government spending and entitlement programs. And in essence, I'll just read a couple of the strategies. The primary objective of the strategy is to create chaos with the hopes of destroying America's capitalist economy and replacing it with a socialist system that includes guaranteed income. A massive drive to recruit the poor onto the welfare rolls. The point of surging welfare claims is to enroll as many individuals as it takes to send the United States into an economic crisis. Now, think of the 12 million people we just entered into this country illegally. 63% right now of non-U.S. citizens are currently activating some form of taxpayer-funded welfare, compared to only 35% of U.S. households. Talk about specifically mention targeting America's large cities for their colossal welfare push. San Francisco, New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, they're overwhelmed right now and targeting the big cities. In a series of welfare drives in large cities, we could impel action on a new federal program to redistribute income. They talk about the best ways to achieve their goals is to create a new loyal voting bloc out of the rapidly increasing number of welfare recipients. Do you think these 12 million people will vote anything other than Democrat if the Republicans say, no, we're going to deport you, let alone? No, they won't. They will continue to vote this way. And on and on and on. And the last piece, I want people to research this for themselves. I don't need to read this over. You can, in 10 minutes, you can read about it. But the last piece that I found really interesting was that both Cloward and Piven agreed that a mainstream media would play a critical role in their organized attack against America. To quote Cloward and Piven, as the crisis develops, it will be important to use the mass media to inform the broader liberal community about the inefficiencies and injustices of welfare. You read this and you will say, my God, they are doing this right now. And they are overwhelming the system. Who's going to pay for those 12 million people? You know, Robert, the Congressional Budget Office which is the last nonpartisan group in Washington, came out and said, this is before the 12 million people came in here. By 2031, in less than 7 years, 100% of tax revenue will go just to pay the interest on the debt and the mandatory entitlement programs, like the $99.5 trillion shortfall in Medicare, the $77 trillion shortfall in Social Security. And when you realize that military spending is a discretional line item on the budget, that means that we will have to borrow money to fund our military. How do we maintain our status as the leader of the free world and financially and militarily when we have to borrow money just to fund the military? It ain't going to happen. That's before the 12 million people came in here. Who's going to pay for them? Their schooling, their housing, their food, their medical. They are overwhelming the system and creating a system that will break, ushering in universal basic income, especially in the big cities, which are becoming nightmares. Throw into it the impending commercial real estate issue, and it gets a whole lot worse.
So I have no faith in the U.S. dollar holding its value, where our debt is going up. We're printing money to pay our bills. That's like using a credit card to pay your mortgage. You know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's why there's no financial education in our schools. But that's why most school teachers are Marxist. And but one of the things that Marx said was that taxation is essential for the spread of communism. But also, was a guy named Thomas Jefferson way back when. He says, if we install a central bank, which the Fed is, and the Bank of Japan and all these guys, our people will wake up homeless. And homelessness is expanding. And this, what I'm trying to say to people, this is not a mistake. And if you're saving dollars, exactly as Michael Saylor says, if you're saving fiat currency, like the yen, the euro, the peso, you're called a poor person. You're getting poorer and poorer because your education hasn't kept up with the times. And that's a problem with going to school where Marxists teach the education. So who was Obama's classmate at Columbia?
I don't know if they were classmates, but Jared Bernstein went there as well. And if you Google Jared Bernstein Cloward-Piven theory, you'll see there's a gazillion articles. He supports it. And Jared Bernstein is the lead economic advisor of the United States government who advocates for losing the reserve status. What better way to lose the reserve status than to tell Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of it, and OPEC, hey, we're going green. Look, I want a clean world too. But to go and say that to Saudi Arabia means you are threatening the existence of the petrodollar. And then sanction and weaponize and even confiscate foreign reserves and tell other people you can do this, but you can't. Look, we invaded Iraq 20 years ago. We're still occupying their country, sanctioning 14 of their banks and holding their oil revenue. They asked us for $1 billion out of the $95 billion in oil revenue that they made last year that's held at the New York Fed. We said, that's not a good time. So what have they done? Formally applied to BRICS. They're kicking Western coalition forces out of the country, made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business and trade in it in Iraq, you will go to jail and they'll take your company. And as of January of this year, they got rid of all green bills, $100 bills. They're out of every bank in Iraq. We are viewed as hypocritical. We can do it. You can't. And if you don't like it, if we're not on our side ideologically, we're going to confiscate your Forex reserves. This is why they're all selling treasuries and buying gold, because it has no counterparty risk.
So counterparty risk means there's gold is money, silver is money. Of the two, just to keep people happy, you have gold, silver. I have silver eagles and gold eagles. Which do you? I think silver is the best buy simply because a person can afford it. It's about $30 today, US. This is 2024. But Bitcoin, you can get a Satoshi or whatever that is, Japanese name. But people are still insisting on saving fake money, fiat currency. That's why I wrote the book Fake, and people are getting poorer and poorer in America because most of our school teachers are Marxist, and they hate the rich. That's why they're going after Trump. They hate him because he's a rich man. He's charged for doing what every real estate investor does. We pad our financials. We say this is how much this building is worth and all this. And as my rich dad said to me a long time ago, he says, so we fill out the financial statements. He says, the difference between your lies and my lies are my lies come true. And so what Trump did, he kind of lied on his financial statement, but he came true. He paid everybody back. But now they're going to take down the former president of the United States just so that guys like Biden, the FBI can't find his laptop. Give me a break. And what about, isn't Biden receiving money from Russia, Ukraine, and China?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a complete and total joke. Don't forget about the cocaine that they destroyed without checking the fingerprints or any of the. I mean, the whole thing is a joke. It's a complete and total joke. I live not too far from Mar-a-Lago, and Sylvester Stallone just bought a house there for $30 million on Palm Beach, and they're trying, and it's a fraction of the size of Mar-a-Lago, and Mar-a-Lago is a much better piece of property. They're saying it's 18 million, not the value. I mean, the whole thing is just a joke. It's really a joke, and it's an embarrassment to this country. It's embarrassment to a guy like you who risked his life fighting for a country that held a higher moral ground than the rest of the world. I find it to be more repugnant than anything we've done mismanaging the world reserve currency. It's what we are doing to the reputation, to liberty, to the reputation of a country that was once the beacon of light around the world. And now people are saying, what the hell has gone on? And your question about what is better. Yeah, I mean, Satoshi is what you're talking about. You can buy little pieces of Bitcoin. Sure, it's great. People can own it and hold it in their own possession off the exchange, no counterparty risk. In terms of gold and silver, look, if I had one trade, it might be gold only because it was reclassified the world's only other tier one asset by the Bank of International Settlements, which is the most powerful bank on the planet. Yet, I think silver is the trade of a generation. If I had two trades, I'd buy silver maybe with the intention of down the road when the ratio between the two correct, trading it back into gold. Interesting thing about silver I'd like to mention, the Silver Institute came out with their numbers recently and said 185 million ounce shortfall this year, over 200 million last year. But in it, it's very conspicuous. They do not mention silver in the military industrial complex at all. No, there is no military breakout. 2 years ago, I gave a speech in Vancouver, the same place I saw you last time at Jay Martin's Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, one of the best, one of only two I go to, conferences all year. Everyone should check him out. He's a mutual friend of ours and a great dude. And in it, I said, there's 500 ounces in a Tomahawk cruise missile. And a guy came up to me. He sent me this cup. He says, I work for the Department of Defense, and I actually helped design the Patriot missile. And I know there's silver in it. I just don't know how much. Well, last time we were there, when I saw you last, he came up to me after my last speech, and he said, you know what? You were right. There's about 14 to 15 kilograms in the tip of a Tomahawk. And he showed me all sorts of pictures. He said, don't worry, this is all declassified. And we talked for an hour. He texted me a couple days ago. I got to get back to him and talk some more because they didn't list it in any of the supply demand fundamentals. So when you think of all the missiles, high-tech missiles, not just Tomahawks and aerospace that need silver, and ask yourself, why would a commercial bank like Bank of America be short 1 billion ounces, naked short of silver? Why was JP Morgan so short? Why did JP Morgan pay a $920 million fine for suppressing the market and is still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust? The largest fine the Justice Department ever issued, and yet they're still allowed to do it. The point of it is the military industrial complex holding the price of silver down so they can create all of these high-tech weapons to sell all around the world, to fund the continuation of war all around the world? Could it be that simple? I don't know, but ask yourself, if indeed it was confirmed by this gentleman, a DOD consultant who said, yes, there is that much in a Tomahawk, think of all the missiles and ask yourself, why is it not in the supply-demand fundamentals? And then ask yourself, why would a handful of commercial banks hold the largest concentrated short position in any commodity traded on COMEX found in silver? It makes no sense until you just take a step back and say, could that be it? Fine line between conspiracy and reality. I'll let you all decide. But in my mind, absolutely why they are allowing these commercial banks to suppress silver in order to fund the military-industrial complex's efforts. And who is the military-industrial complex? I don't know. Is it BlackRock and Vanguard? They own everything, including the ETFs. Could it be them? Maybe. Don't know. I'll let you all decide.
Well, that's the whole point here is that whole thing is so rigged. It's terrifying. And that's why counterparty risk means I don't want to own a stock because I don't know who's got it. Like if I borrow,
Right.
if I borrow money, I mean, who's the guy going to pay me back? Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Right.
And gold and silver, you don't need that. Same as Bitcoin. You have no counterparty risk. Like, would you lend your stupid brother-in-law $1 million? You know what I mean? No, because the
Right.
guy doesn't even have a job. And so the point, another point you made was, and we'll complete with this, is not only is silver used in batteries with EVs and all that, and I bought my first EV. I love the car. It's a Cadillac Lyric. I go past gas stations and all that, and I own oil wells, so I'm kind of traitor to my industry. But I like the battery car. I mean, I don't go far distances, but I love the car. But the thing about no counterparty risk and all this, it's getting scarcer and scarcer and scarcer, much like Bitcoin, because silver is consumed just as Bitcoin has a finite. And that's one reason I like silver. And most people can afford $35 today. So,
Well, when you talk about the counterparty risk in silver, and it is getting scarcer. So if you think you own, for example, a COMEX contract of silver, which is 5,000 ounces, currently the registered category is rehypothecated. Those are the bars that are on COMEX that people hold contracts that they think they own, they can take delivery of. It's rehypothecated roughly about 1,800%, meaning if everyone stood for delivery, 17 would get cash, one would get the bar.
You got to explain what rehypothecate means.
It just means selling the same asset over and over and over and over and over and over again because of the leverage. Most people never stood for delivery ever. And when they developed the COMEX market, they figured, here's how we can do it. We can let people pretend to pay and we can pretend to give it to them. What I mean by that is that if I buy a COMEX gold contract to hedge my inventory, I just have to have about $8,000 in my margin account. The trade's $15 or less. The $8,000 in my margin account, as long as the price doesn't go against me, allows me to control 100 ounces of gold. Now, I could stand for delivery, but that's what I mean about pretend to pay for it. Now, they can pretend that I own it by selling that same contract over many times over.
Let's keep it real simple. It very simply means they're selling the same product over and over and over again. That's what rehypothecate means. So if somebody says, well, where's my silver? We're in trouble.
Well, yeah, that's right. It would be only 1 out of 18 would get their silver. The rest would get cash settlement. That's exactly.
And that's part of the fractional reserve system that banks run on. So I think one of the biggest things we should heed, it was from Thomas Jefferson again, like he says that if a central bank takes over, which is the Fed, the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, this is our people will wind up homeless in the land their fathers fought for. And that's what's happening right now. Homelessness is increasing very simply because every time they print money, asset prices go up. But when you print money, so does food and gasoline and all that go up. So people like you and me, because we're saving gold and silver, the asset price goes up, so we get richer. But for the people who are saving money, they're getting poorer, and that's why Michael Saylor says, what do you call a person who saves fiat currency? Poor. And because we have no financial education in our schools, the poor are getting poor. Now they can't afford to buy a house, they can't afford the rent, and homelessness goes up. But this is why, I'm so adamant about why don't we have financial education in schools. The Rich Dad Company is for. But that's why I love what you do, because every time I buy from you, you always educate me. So final words, Andy, how can people get in touch with Miles Franklin, and how do you recommend they start if they want to? I make no money from this. I'm not saying you should. I'm not a financial advisor. So how would people get in touch with Miles Franklin?
I love you, Robert, and I appreciate your kind words. info@milesfranklin.com. Say you heard me on the Robert Kiyosaki show, and we will send you the current price list, which will be far more competitive than anything you see on our website and most every other company in America. Any questions you've heard on here you want to be expanded upon, or any questions you have, info@milesfranklin, and we'll make it a very, very, very good experience. You have my word on that.
One of the problems with gold and silver is storage. Well, how does Miles Franklin mitigate that?
So, I think that if you can hold it yourself, it behooves you because of the lack of counterparty risk and having no one in between you and your money. But we do, I think, have the finest storage program in the industry. I think we're the envy of the storage industry. We have a exclusive arrangement that no one else has with Brinks for a fixed rate storage program all throughout 9 vaults around the country, and meaning it's based on the ounces rather than the value. That's very unusual in the industry. And if you need to store it, all of our storage accounts are 100% segregated, insured, and audited semi-annually for safety.
The reason I laugh is, you deal with attorneys. A lot of them they're basically smart people, but they lack a lot of common sense, if you know what I mean. Every attorney I meet, I said, how in the world, all you are is an attorney. You don't know much about that. But I was at this one conference, masses of people, and this attorney stands up there and he says, yeah, I own gold and silver. And somebody says, where do you keep it? I keep it at my house. And I said,
oh, God.
I just cracked up. I said, why don't you say, come over to my house for a potluck? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing about storage. If you're going to store it, make sure you do it with a very reputable company. And that's why I partnered with Brinks in storage, because they're the finest in the industry. In over 100 years, they've never had an attempted break into any of their facilities. So that's who I choose.
And is the Cloward-Piven, that's the paper?
Piven, Cloward-Piven theory.
Okay. Well, Andy, thanks so much for being an educator, most importantly, but also is that we both had, my poor dad saved money. That's why he was poor. Really sad, And my rich dad, he didn't save gold, he saved silver, because we couldn't, gold was illegal for us, if you remember. But,
yeah, till 1974, yeah. That's right.
So anyway, and the rule of thumb is always pay yourself first.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And I'm always so happy to be here and to see you. You look great. Thanks for having me. And in a world that's going to get increasingly volatile leading up to the big meeting in October for the BRICS, where 36 more countries have formally applied, and then the election the month after, I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about. So I'm always willing to jump on. And in the meantime, I hope you and everyone else out there stay well. As the Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. And boy, these are getting more and more interesting by the day. So I hope everyone stays well.
So Andy, thank you very much. And then we'll see you around the block. And we'll be right back with the final words from Rich Dad. Welcome back. And once again, this is Rich Dad Radio Show. We make no recommendations. I'm not a financial advisor, and I make no commissions off of Andy Schectman or gold or silver. I appreciate Andy because he's first an educator, and the reason I like dealing with him is to get my education. And one of the rules of thumb about investing is only invest in what you understand or start really small. So I started really small in Bitcoin, and I got on late with 6,000 a coin, and today it's about 60,000. So that's how I learn. But anyway, this is April 2024, and 2 weeks ago I was in Mar-a-Lago, Trump's place, right near where Andy lives in Palm Beach, Florida. And the big riot, not the riot, but there was a huge crowd that showed up for Trump. It was called Border 911. There's thousands of people showed up paying like $2,000 for a seat to hear people talk about how we're going to stop the open border that Biden, as you may know, Trump put the wall up and Biden took the wall down. So I think Biden is one of the biggest, most treasonous president we've ever had. But as I always say in closing, don't pay attention to what a person says, watch what they do. And what Biden is doing is destroying this company. That person, Jared Bernstein, is on Biden's staff. So please understand that this is not Democrat, Republican. This is about capitalism versus Marxism. Thanks for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.